add anything to the agenda for today? All right. Tracy, metrics and report review.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for joining. We'll take a look at our metrics reporting. Again, this is our Splunk file that comes out. First chart here is the test completion codes. Let me just turn the sheet on in the right place here. This particular graph looks at network performance. And for the month of February, we have everything falling into place where it needs to be. Those two on the ends, for some reason, the tool stopped capturing exact times. So that's actually the last day of January and the first day of March, which is why they're not full. But everything else has fallen into where it needs to be. This is just the constant ping to the servers to make sure everything's up and working properly. The next chart is going to be MOS by PSAP. This is where we look at the voice quality on these next ones. Again, this is for the month of February. Each PSAP is included, and we're looking at marks to be right at that number 4 in the legend to the left. So we don't see any issues for the month of February as far as voice goes in looking at MOS by PSAP. We kind of double the information and take a look at it, but we look at the ECMC route. And again, for the month of February, as long as these are showing at that number 4 line, we don't have a lot of concern from the knock. It's not going to notify anything. So everything looking good from that side. Packet loss percentage is the next one. And in the tariff, we're looking at less than or equal to that 0.5. This one is falling into place, like it has before. I still have the outstanding question to my team, and there isn't anything showing us why there is such an extreme difference in the Denver and Miami sites. It's still something they're looking at, but since it's within the range, there's nothing, alarming showing up as to indicate why that's happening. I haven't closed the ticket with them because I'm still hoping that we'll find something, but it's still on their radar, but I don't have an update for that. This next chart, we had to kind of change the verbiage of the tariff. Got 20 milliseconds is equal to 20,000 microseconds, and we measure in microseconds. Again, this shows Denver and Miami and falling into place. There was a little bit of a jump there towards the end of February, but wasn't something that would have caused an alarm on the knock side. Any questions for me on the network or voice or node metrics? Okay, get into the good stuff now, the day-to-day stuff. Okay. So the first one here, this came up, I think, a couple sessions ago. We knew that there was an issue with Greenwood Village, and we had heard Westco as well. I believe Andrew Freeber did have a conversation with Kathy about Greenwood Village and provided some explanation on that one. What I was asked to do on this call is to get, if there are some additional details on what went wrong with Westco, because internally we aren't finding anything on the West Coast side. But Andrew, I think Andrew's still on here. I think unless Kathy has additional questions, the Greenwood Village one was wrapped up.
I believe it was taken care of. I texted back and forth with Andrew yesterday. I wasn't that involved in it because it was the non-emergency lines, but I just did try to help them to figure out what was going on.
Okay.
Yeah, and that seemed to be a port with a different provider. Um, and so, I just have limited visibility to that, but normally when there's an issue with porting, it's the date gets changed, by a day or two, and then there's already orders in flight, and those might not, get updated also. But typically that's driven by the company that's taken over service. Um, So that's what it looked like to me, was that, maybe something got turned off a day early, because it was porting right around the holiday, to another provider. But
Yeah,
that's typically done between the other provider and like the Lumen wholesale side.
yeah, and if I'm remembering correctly, I think what I understood happened was that they had initiated that or asked for that turnoff, and then they decided they weren't going to do it, and so they canceled it, and it got canceled at one point, but it didn't get canceled farther down the line, and I think that's what
Uh,
caused the issue.
gotcha.
So, but I mean, if you want to reach out to Mike Stewart, with Greenwood, I'm sure if you need more information, he can provide it. But I think that's what happened. The cancellation only went so far, and, point A knew it was canceled, but point B did not. And so I think this is the one that happened on December 24th.
Yep, that's what I had.
Okay.
Cool, thanks, guys. How about, do we have anyone on for Wesco that can give a little more details as to what happened there?
All we know is you guys turned off our admin phone line service. We're waiting for clear answers from you.
Tracy, this is Jeff. I talked with Brian about that. And from what I understand from him, I don't know which systems they're talking about. It sounds like there's a new system the techs are using. And in this particular case, it was human error, that it was looked at as a disconnect opposed to a change that was requested.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that I was able to gather from Brian off of this.
And being that it's human error, do we know if Matt or Jeff, has it been fixed?
It was corrected that same day. Yes.
Okay. Just jotting it down. So Matt, based on that, I'm not going to know the specific systems either, but it sounds like it was done inadvertently, human error and then corrected. What else would you want from us to close this one out, since I don't know that there'll be any additional details that we can find?
This is a soft side thing, right? I mean, about the only thing you can do is implement improved training and understanding so that human error like this doesn't happen.
Agreed.
So technically speaking, for this spreadsheet, we can consider it resolved, but this is a service quality issue.
Okay.
On the human side.
I would agree with that. I can't talk today. Network performance project. This is specific to Estes Park. I am still waiting for my engineers to get some information as to addressing and the details of what is left. I reached out to them on Friday, going to, I guess, schedule a follow-up meeting. I'll get with Kimberly and see if there's a good time. I don't have the information that I can go and pull, so I'll have to circle back with them and find out what's left. I have asked our vendor escalation team to work with the vendor and let us know what's left as well, just so we can cover all of our stops there. So I'm hoping to get some more information on that one shortly, and then we can finish the progression at that particular site. For Garfield County, this is one where this site, due to the way it was initially quoted, it fell to a lumen for circuits. And since then, we have went back and asked, per the PSAP's request, Comcast to quote the second circuit on this one. We have not gotten that quote back. So this one is just kind of waiting for Comcast to give us a quote as to what it would take for them to go into this location. The way it sits right now, it's still lumen for the circuits at this location. So we've got our team reaching out to Comcast too to ask them if they can give us a quote for the second circuit.
And Tracy, this is Carl at Garfield. It doesn't have to be Comcast, but the problem with Lumen is when they came in to install the second circuit, they installed it in the exact same pair that they did the previous one. I'm not sure if that's redundant, let alone diverse. And that's
Okay.
the issue.
Okay. I'll make note of that and we can circle back. I'll get with probably Kevin and the circuit folks offline and see.
But we do already have Comcast coming into here for internet.
Right. And I know you said, I think maybe at the time this project started, a couple of years ago when we were getting these quotes, Comcast didn't bid. So that's why we went lumen, and we have gone back and asked them just because it sounds like they are in the area. So I don't know, I don't have insight as to why they aren't providing that quote, but I can find out and we maybe can even open it up to other vendors that might be open to that. Or it sounds like if the lumen circuit is placed in a different location, that might work as well.
Possibly, but I mean, I'm not real trusting of that just the way it was connected before. I mean, it was just, it's not diverse.
Okay, I get it.
And that's what we're being told we're getting.
Yep, I agree. Line 7, this is kind of just the overall network performance project. I'm providing these updates to the best that I can once a week. I know that we're just over 50% of the circuits being placed statewide. We have an internal meeting next week to kind of pinpoint where the other 50% are and what teams we need to kind of work with to get these delivered a little bit faster. In January, I did begin the activation of certain locations. So once a PSAP has both circuits in place, the communication is a little bit easier because it's 100% me and Intrado. So we don't have to worry about, waiting for vendors or circling back with different groups. So we have been successful. Washington, Yuma, Castle Rock, El Paso County's backup site, Rohit, Moffett, and Vale all are complete as far as the circuits being activated. Those were all good. We just did Vale yesterday, and thank goodness, our technician was able to kind of hop through some loops and make sure that Vale was up and running as well. Over the course of the next 30 days, we have scheduled El Paso's main site. Denver City and County, their location on 45th Street is going to activate, as well as the Josephine location. Broward County, Douglas County Sheriff, and Summit County have all been scheduled. And I do need confirmation. I'll reach out again today. Jefferson County Communications, I have them on the schedule for the month of March. I just need confirmation that the date works. And then I can share with you who will be on deck for April and May. I don't have dates yet. I'm waiting to align the Intrado engineer. But the following sites are ready for activation, and I'll be reaching out for approval to do this. That would be Aurora, Federal Heights, Longmont Police Department, Westco Backup, El Rio Blanco, Adams County 911, Littleton PD, Grand Junction PD, Broomfield, and the Cortez Backup site. All of you have 2 circuits in place. I just need to coordinate a time with Intrado and my lumen technician. So we do have techs on site for each of these activations. There isn't anything for the PSAP to do, except for let our techs on site so that they can work with Intrado. So the activations are moving along pretty quickly. I expect by the next meeting, we'll probably have the groups that are going to go in May, June, and July.
Hey, Tracy, Jeff's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Hey, Tracy, can you let me know who your contact is at Jefferson County Communications to make sure we've got the right person and I can reach out?
Yeah. Let's see. Communications. Actually, I probably can tell you here in just a second. Jeffcom Communications. Let me just see who the request went to. I think I have 2 folks on here. Slowly but surely. But yeah, these seem to be going a little more smoother than the actual circuit placement. Jeffcom Communications. Sorry, 1 second. Got Douglas County Sheriff. So the email did go to Kevin and Jeff.
Okay. And they changed their domain, so they're a .gov domain now. I don't know if you have the .org domain on your emails.
So for Kevin, I have .gov.
Great.
Jeff, do not.
Okay.
So I can resend it.
That would be great.
Matt?
And it just what we're asking for on this one is I have you guys set up for Wednesday, March 25th at 11 a.m. So if that day and time works, we'll get you taken care of.
Okay, I'll let them know. Thank you.
Yep.
Matt?
Is there another question?
Yeah, Matt's going.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi.
How much advance notice can you give for the Wesco backup activation, or have you already set a time?
I've made the request, so give me just a minute. I try not to give you guys a date until I have it confirmed both with my engineer and Intrado's. So Wesco backup, let's see if I have that one. Denver, I mean, I know I have it. Let me see if it's been Littleton, Grand Junction. So the request that was put in is April 23rd. And that should be confirmed next week. I'm trying to go 2 to 3 weeks out is when I'm trying to schedule these.
Wesco will probably need to do some additional coordination for the techs to get on site.
Okay. So what I'll do is if I get the April 23rd time slot, which I requested, I'll send that out. And either yes or no, right? PSAP has the right to say no, that doesn't work for me. But what I'd like to make sure everybody knows is we have limited activation windows. So if that date doesn't work, you're going to go into the next bucket, which would be at least a month out.
So the sooner that we can coordinate and hear from your team or from you to make sure we can get someone in and chaperone them, the better.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, I have the dates from Intrado of the 23rd. I need to make sure that my activation tech is available at the same time, and that I have a technician that can be on site with you guys at the same time. I have been told that by the end of this week, I should have those timeframes summed up, and they're 90-minute blocks.
90 minutes. Okay, thanks.
You bet. And I'll mark it down here. As soon as I get yours, I'll send it over. And again, these are just, there's no real order. I get notification that both circuits are ready to go. So I get some dates and times from Intrado, and I just plug people in as they're available. You're more than welcome to say no. We want to work with you guys as much as possible. There isn't downtime because we're doing one circuit at a time, but we do need access to the site. And then the only thing I need to point out is that if that date and time doesn't work, I'm going to assign it to the next PSAP on the list, just so we can keep this project moving. Any other questions on just the activations and the circuit process? Okay. Network performance projects. We keep this one on here for the middle mile. That's done by Tim and Tressa quarterly. I'm not sure what their next due date is, but that information is provided through their reporting mechanism. I do not have any new information on the Colorado, New Mexico transfers. That is still between everyone's legal groups trying to get, a whole bunch of lawyers to agree on language can be a little difficult sometimes. So I'm not part of that project yet, but once everything is signed and sealed, program management will definitely step in and kind of do the same thing that we did for Nebraska, Colorado. Star code cleanup. I haven't seen a formal request come over to complete this yet, so we're kind of pending.
Jennifer, do you want to provide an update on that?
Sure. Just a reminder again, we have cleaned up the star codes and got it down to 1 star code per agency. So this is the very last call to update your star code records, your speed dials, your resources at your consoles. I will be making a request for Intrado to delete the unused star codes. I've had a couple of questions, and I just want to make clear there are 2 State Patrol secondary PSAPs, State Patrol Denver and State Patrol Pueblo. They do have star codes, but they are not on the list because they are not accepting 911 calls at this time. So if you have to transfer 911 calls to State Patrol Denver or State Patrol Pueblo, you need to transfer to their admin lines. Those star codes won't be deleted, but they're not on the list so that 911 calls aren't getting lost. And when they get to the point where they are accepting 911 calls, then we'll put those back on the list and update it. So if you need a copy of the star code list, please email me. We do not want to have a situation where you're transferring to a star code that's no longer active. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you. Tariff language around CGIS requirements. We still are just over 50% of PSAPs that have responded. As a reminder, this was sent out, I believe by Jeff, just a survey to help confirm what requirements might be for different locations. You know, some of them require an escort, some require certain certifications. We just want to make sure that when we do send someone on site, that we are following the rules of your location. So if you need the link sent again, let me know. But it would be incredibly helpful if we can get this above 50% response rate. Because we don't know the requirements of your particular site if they're not shared with us. And I think this might be the last one on here, the ECATs statewide. You know, this is still
Tracy, Matt had his hand up. I'm not sure if
Sorry,
it's related to that.
No worries. Just spitballing for like outreach ideas. Is this something that the Colorado 911 Resource Center could help with outreach on? Do we have Resource Center folks that could maybe consider that?
Matt, I'm not sure who that question was for. Is it for us?
No, it's more toward
Okay.
Resource Center board members or Connie, their executive director.
I'm sorry, Matt, I was multitasking here, so I can certainly pass it on to Connie. I just was preoccupied with something else. Sorry.
No worries.
She's on the call. I don't know if Connie, sorry to put you on the spot on that one.
That's okay. I'm here and I too is multitasking. What am I outreaching for? What?
Go ahead.
No, thank you, Tracy. I was going to ask you to do a quick recap.
So Connie, one of the things that Lumen has been looking for is different PSAPs within the state of Colorado have different requirements as to who can come on site. Some of them need certain certifications. Some of them need an escort. There's just different rules for different locations. And Jeff Winkleman has sent out a survey last year asking each individual location to please tell Lumen, you know, what are the requirements for us to come on site so that we can make sure we're prepared and that we're sending the right person out to do work at your 911 center. And over the course of the last few months, we have gotten some responses, but we're just over 50%. So there's a lot of sites out there where we don't know if there are special requirements that our technicians need to have.
And Tracy, and Jeff, I know you're on the call too.
Yes.
Let me know who I need to reach out and give me the verbiage, and I will be happy to encourage people.
What I can do kind of is I'll go through, because right now we have 37 responses. So I'll work this backwards. I'll get the list of the ones that have responded, and then I'll work with you on getting the communication out.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for the suggestion, Matt.
Yep. Okay. ECATs, you know, we're still kind of just in a holding pattern for this one. Again, the weekly update is going to show you which sites have not taken advantage of the ECAT solution. Some of them it's due to, you know, call handling equipment, and we understand that. It's just the project is not technically complete because there's a few locations that for various reasons just haven't gotten this rolled out. Anytime these sites are ready, reach out to me. I will pull in the correct throttle folks. And usually, you know, once we get the IP information to them, it's very quickly for your site to get the ECATs solution. So we'll keep that on here just because there's a few locations that aren't complete. The last two items on here, I have circled back to my regulatory folks, and I don't think that they have had any additional conversations with you guys, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened because I'm not typically part of those conversations. So I can't tell for certain, but I think Daryl is probably the one that they would have contacted. So Daryl, if you're on, have you heard anything, or do I need to follow up again?
Daryl had to jump off, but he hasn't heard anything.
Okay, I will ask again. Like I said, sometimes those conversations take place without me, and so I don't know, but I'll ask again. I have an email chain that I'll just reply to. I don't know on the rest of these guys. I know Rick.
Tracy, we got one more. Alex Wall with Metza.
Sorry about that. Had to unmute myself. Yeah, on behalf of Wesco, Tracy, on your closed and monitoring tab, we had the calls with no usable alley issue crop up again a couple weeks ago. And we'd like to get that moved back into active tracking. I believe you were on the email last week or the week before last.
Okay.
Where I asked Sue, we got some good immediate kind of responses back from Sue Jansen and Andrew Freebird actively looking into it, as well as I believe Colleen from one of the NOCs. And we had posed some additional questions in my last email, but we didn't get any response or acknowledgement of those questions. It's been a couple weeks, so I was just wondering if your team is working on that, trying to find answers to those questions, or what the status is on that item, please.
Yeah, Alex, it's Andrew. We're I guess kind of collectively on our side, we've been reaching out trying to find the correct technical resource to help us answer that / dig into it some more. So I'm we're kind of working internally on that. I don't have any new update, but that is in progress. I'll check back in with everybody today, but we the folks that we had on there, we were a little unsure. So we're still working on probably bringing in somebody else that can help us with that, and it's ongoing.
This is Matt. So why leave us hanging for 2 weeks without a response of any kind?
Yeah, and that's I agree. That's on me because Sue let me know that she wasn't responding and I did not respond. Is completely my bad, and I did leave you guys hanging. There's not an excuse for that. I just hadn't replied, and it's my fault.
Let's do better.
You got it.
Appreciate the update, Andrew. And yeah, we just like, even if you can't answer all the questions immediately, yeah, just keep us updated on the process for that. And if you can answer some, just spit those out as you get them rather than all at once. But just the whole thing is pretty concerning with just seeing what appear to be actual 911 calls kind of being delivered to supposed testing temporary numbers to our trucks. So we just really want to understand why that happened or what's happening there and how to get that resolved as quickly as possible.
Yep. If I can get anything out to you piecemeal, I will too.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If we wanted to take a quick little look at the Carbine tab, I can give a couple updates on that, and then I think I'll just let Rich discuss the GIS portion. For Grand Junction, we're done. Myself and Entrado completed that, so we can, I'll probably just leave it on here as closed because this is separate kind of from the ESInet data. Denver 911, this one, I do have a kickoff call scheduled tomorrow. It's very high level. There is some documentation that is required from Carbine to Lumen and Entrado before we can do anything with this site. I believe this is one where C1 is going to be a part of it also. So once Lumen and Entrado do the migration to Carbine, then Carbine and C1 will do some work as well. So tomorrow I'm going to kick that off to make sure Carbine and the PSAP understand what information is going to be required. And then we can schedule calls moving forward from that one. For Aurora, yeah.
Can you forward that meeting invite to me? I think that's just been made with my technical team and I'm not on it.
Yeah, second here.
Thank you.
Yep. Andrew. Yeah, like I said, it's high level. We've done this with the other locations, and it really is Entrado sharing with Carbine. This is the information we need to do this project for you, and then it falls back to Carbine. So I will get you included. Let me see here. For Aurora, I don't have any official kickoff paperwork approval to do this one, so it's kind of at a standstill on my end. Westminster and Broomfield, you know, we're doing at the same time, of course, and they do have the data exchange worksheet is what it is from Entrado that needs to be filled out. My last update from Westminster Broomfield was they were waiting for a Carbine PM to be assigned. So once that is done, I'll have a kickoff call with them. I just received, I believe not too long ago, information that Durango is ready to move forward. So Lumen needs to get an RG29 over to Entrado. And once that's done, we can schedule a kickoff call with Durango. And then I don't have anything for Rio Blanco yet as far as the necessary paperwork to do that project.
Tracy, this is Jeff. In regards to Aurora, get with me after this call and
Okay.
we can talk through what's required on that. I thought we'd gotten everything over. And then I'm also waiting for responses on Rio Blanco for the paperwork that had been sent over.
Okay. Anything else as far as the Carbine project goes? Like I said, it's kind of separate from the ESInet and like my normal day-to-day role. So I'm going to keep it separate on this sheet, but things are moving forward. It's really not a lot of work between Lumen and Entrado. It's just a matter of getting the paperwork taken care of so that we can do the cutover. Okay. I don't think I have anything else project status wise, unless you guys have something for me.
Tracy, the only thing I have, and Kathy, I see your hands up. I just want to remind everybody that if you have vendors going direct to you related to diverse circuit or other improvement plan projects that's under the umbrella of CenturyLink, to loop Tracy in. We have re-engaged for our diverse circuit, and we've got vendors going direct with us, which I understand and we're dealing with, and it's not perfect, but it's okay. But I keep looping Tracy in to make sure she's involved and knows, especially with scheduling. So please do that because it helps keep everybody in line. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Tracy, but we're trying to keep you in the loop.
Yeah, and like I said, we touched on this a little bit on another call when we talked about the next round of tariffs. This one we definitely learned a lesson that direct contact with these vendors would have made things a lot smoother communication wise. Lessons learned. We probably could have done something differently because right now, Tamika and I are dependent on those vendors reaching out to us. I do think sometimes it's a little bit more efficient if they're going directly to the PSAP as well, because it saves time. Like I know they reached out to Boulder and they're like, can we come on site on this date? And I was looped in just to make sure I was aware. But sometimes if they come straight to me and they want to come on site in 2 days, if I'm not in the office, we're going to miss the opportunity to move your project forward. But I definitely want to know when they're coming on site. And also I've had a lot of you just, call me and say, is this part of the network improvement project? And I can check order numbers and say yes or no, and this is who should be coming. So like I said, lessons learned, we might have done this phase of the project a little bit differently. But right now we're just trying to improve as much as we can. And like Steve and I know, we're trying to schedule on site for Boulder right now, but you guys have a ton of stuff going on. So if it's going to work for the week of the 23rd, that's great. And if we need to push it out, we can do that too. I saw your response to kind of waiting to see if we can come in on the week of the 23rd.
Yeah.
And Steve, real quick, John here. I have replied to that, and we do have availability.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Awesome. We'll make sure they're there then, because this is one step closer to being able to put Boulder on the activation list.
Yeah, and Tracy, while I don't think there's a perfect solution, there needs to be a better solution with coordination, project management, and that is exactly why I sent my email to Tim and your staff as excuse me, as a request for the new improvement plan to have specific project management, representation of CenturyLink on site during these work orders. We certainly can get a better service. It may not be perfect, but it's got to be better than what it is now.
Right, and that was discussed on a call. I don't know. I think everyone was invited to it to talk about the next phase. I can't speak to having Lumen on site for everything, but as far as the next, like the Starlink DeGero, whoever the project manager is from Lumen is going to have direct contact with DeGero and Starlink, whereas with the Comcast vendors, I have not. So I think that is definitely an improvement. As far as on site, I don't even know what the scope of work is for those yet. That hasn't even been completely defined, but we did see the email. We took in, everybody's comments and are taking everything into consideration. But at least for these two new vendors, for the new plan, we do have direct contact with them. So I'm not going to have a middle person trying to help us schedule anything. It will be a Lumen PM working directly with Starlink.
Well, and that's reassuring. However, I think what we're trying to get is the service level to the customer, the PSAP. The vendor is important, but it's about how CenturyLink manages all of us.
Right, and maybe I said it incorrectly. It would be a CenturyLink program manager going to Starlink and saying, this is what I need, and then CenturyLink communicating with the PSAP with the customer instead of the vendors.
Yeah, that's
These
what I
two
thought you were
vendors
saying.
are just set up differently.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were getting at, but
Yep.
it's about the service level. So
Yep.
Cool. Well, thanks, Kathy. We got.
So just following up on that, thanks for that great segue. I was just going to ask like Tracy and or Jeff, because I've had some emails back and forth with you where I'll just say South Metro received a technician dispatch notice, and they have some projects going on with CenturyLink. The authority has some projects going on with CenturyLink, and CenturyLink has some projects going on. So I was wondering if there was some way that CenturyLink or whoever could assign a project number to these projects, share that with us, when we are part of that project, so that when we get one of these notices, we can look and see that project number and know what it is about. It's just, it gets real monotonous, I guess. Like I get an email from South Metro. I send it to you, Tracy, and to you, Jeff. Then I have to wait for you to, respond back. What project is this? If we had some way to cross-reference or know what the project is, it would just make things so much smoother on the PSAP end.
That's a good question, Kathy. Tracy, when we talk in regards to Aurora, let's chew on that a little bit, because I don't know if that's even a possibility to add a project number to those notifications. Yeah. So we'll have to find out.
Yeah, I don't know. And Kathy, I'll go back and look at the notifications that you forwarded to us, because as far as the ones that are mine, because I'm not part of the other projects, but for these circuit activations, my order number should be provided in that notification, and I can give you a list of the circuit order numbers, today, if that would be helpful. But it's not tied to a specific project. Mine would be circuit order numbers.
Yeah, I was just thinking project number, but if you can give us something where we can look at that, because I'm looking at it right here. I've got the order number, but I have nothing to reference it to. So I'm immediately having to forward it to you guys and then wait. And I think it would just be a lot quicker if we had that information. And again, like what Steve said, better service on the PSAP side.
Kathy, what's the order number that you have in front of you?
It is 557.
Yep.
Hang on just a second.
I'm pretty sure that's going to be mine because most of mine are 557 is how they start.
Okay. 659 681, I believe.
Okay. So Kathy, let me do this for your locations. I can pull up because I believe all of your orders have been placed. I can tell you what they are, and that way when these notifications come in, if those numbers are associated, then that's part of this network improvement plan. If it's not one of those numbers, it's not.
Okay.
I don't have any other orders.
That would be helpful. So just so that I can look at numbers and say, okay, yeah, that's for this, or it's not. And then if we don't know what it's for, then we can reach out. But if we do, that'd be great.
Yep, I'll send them to you.
I want to take a second also, if we can, in regards to the next project that Tracy was talking about. If you haven't attended, there's another meeting coming up this Thursday afternoon. Strongly suggest joining that. There's a lot of good information between Tim and primarily Steve Deloche talking about what the next submission or potential submission will be for the network improvement itself, adding SD-WAN, Degero, and Starlink.
And Jeff, just to confirm, if you attended the first one, the second is a repeat, just for scheduling courtesy. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
That's correct. Doesn't that also include proposal for additional last mile connections?
Yes, we did get a few of those back, not too many, not many that are super promising, but yes, we'll weave those in as well and see what that looks like for everybody.
Right on.
Is there anything else for Tracy and the tracker before we move on to Rich? All right, the floor is yours, Rich.
Okay. Hello everybody. I'm going to steal the screen here if I can.
Yep, hold on just a second.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, here you go. Sorry.
Should
There you
get
go. You should be good.
Yeah, let me know if you can see it.
Yep.
Okay. Hi folks. So I'm going to go through kind of what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. I'm excited about it. We've had lots of successes. So let me walk through, but stop me anytime for questions. I will talk about the what we're calling an interim solution for those boundaries, which are few and far between, that only handle certain call types. So I will discuss that towards the end of this. But let me just go through and show you what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, and we'll go from there. Okay, let me get over there. So we did have, just go through the agenda. We did go live with our first PSAP San Miguel on last Monday. So that was a success. I'll show you some piece parts of that, and again, kind of revisit how this all works. We then had an additional 9 deployments on Thursday of last week that went well. I'll show you some current statistics from over the last few days. I ran them last night, so it's actually Friday through Monday. We'll talk about this interim solution. So this is what was brought up a little bit earlier, in that there are certain very unique situations where there are some PSAPs that today only accept a certain type of call. For example, a college campus that accepts only wireline calls. So from a high level, the system right now is set up to GIS route for those areas that do all types of calls. In the future, and I'll talk about this, it's really exciting. we'll be able to put these I3 policy rules in effect to be able to GIS route just certain types of calls. But in the interim, there is a solution to maintain the existing feature functionality until the new feature functionality becomes available. And then I'll talk about this new feature functionality that's coming out in the next 3 or 4 months. I'll go through this quickly, but if I'm going too fast, slow me down. This is from a very high level our current solution for the state of Colorado. We do something that's not identified here is we do have carriers coming directly into the core via IP through Lumen's Media Gateway. So there are calls, a good amount of calls now doing that. But in essence, calls come into that core. The core identifies the trunk groups that they're coming in on, has certain configuration set up for those trunk groups. In essence, to do ESN routing or to do GIS routing. It's then pulls that information if necessary, plots it within the core, within our GIS boundaries, and then ships it to the appropriate PSAP. This is a little bit closer detail. I used all diagrams from previous calls we've had with the state here, so they should look pretty familiar. Again, when we get a call that comes in that's designated for GIS routing, we go ahead and do a location database query on that. So we go out to our location database. It steers out in this transitional solution that we're in right now, where carriers aren't coming in I3 and providing the location information at the time of the call. We're going out and using kind of the old-fashioned methodology to do that. So we go steer it out to the wireless or VoIP providers and their third-party providers to gather that information. Our system, just for a heads up, the longest it'll wait is 1.3 seconds for that. If it doesn't receive it back, or if it's beyond an acceptable radius, and our radius is 160 meters. If it takes too long, or if it's a bad fix, we fall back to ESN routing, just like we did prior to any of these GIS changes. If it is a good fix, and I'm not showing a piece here, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, we go to something called our forest guide. That's a NINA I3 defined database that says, really, okay, where do I ship this next? The thought around the forest guide is that in the future, you're going to have a lot of intertwined ESInets, and that forest guide really points it to what ESInet, whether it's an I3 capable or GIS routing capable ESInet, and then points it there. So everything in Colorado, the forest guide, if it's configured to do GIS routing, will point it to the Lumen Intrado ECRF. The ECRF then has the boundaries loaded into it, plots that latitude and longitude, identifies the PSAP, and then we send it to the PSAP. I'm going through this fast, but if you need more clarification, please stop me and I'll give it to you. What we did for San Miguel prior, or some prior to Monday, some on Monday, is we loaded the San Miguel boundary in our ECRF. So we preload that stuff because we can. It really doesn't get turned on until a couple other steps, one being that forest guide, that pre-server, that's a GIS database that says, okay, if it's loaded here, I'm going to let it go to the next step. So we can preload everything in the ECRF. The day of the deployment, we actually activated all the incoming trunk groups for Colorado to do GIS routing. Since we're rolling this out PSAP by PSAP, there is no downside to turning up the GIS routing for the trunk groups. And because some of them are shared, actually a majority of them are shared, we just turned up all the trunk groups. So all the trunk groups for Colorado now are attempting GIS routing. It's whether or not the PSAP is fully provisioned of whether or not it will use it. So we turned up the trunk groups for GIS routing. That does create a list query on all calls coming into the infrastructure. And if there's which there is in my mind, if there's a benefit to the PSAP, through that CMP tool that y'all should have access to, and if you don't, you can let Tracy know and we'll get you access. That's where you can see the CDRs for every call coming into the infrastructure. Now you will see a CDR for every call coming into the infrastructure of a location query going out and a response coming back. So even if you're not deployed GIS at this point, you'll see us go attempt to get the location of those callers. And if we get it, you'll see it in the logs. If you're not turned up GIS yet on a per PSAP basis, we won't use it. We'll fall back to ESN routing. But if you are, that's what we use to then plot it within our forest guide and then our ECRF to determine which PSAP it is. Then the final step that we did on Monday for San Miguel was to load that PSAP into the forest guide. Again, that's a pre-ECRF spatial database that says, is this I3 or GIS capable? If so, then you can go to the next level and plot it. So what we do is, again, we've preloaded all the trunks. They're ready to go. We will preload all the actual ECRF GIS data, so that's ready to go. And right prior to the turn up, the day of turning up a PSAP, we'll load that boundary into the forest guide to let it go to the next step to actually do the GIS routing. So we did all that for San Miguel. Then it was kind of a wait for a call and validate. Our solution, again, if any GIS fails at all, it'll fall back to ESN routing. If it's not available, if we go out and try to plot it and it's not there, we always fall back to ESN routing. So we're at least maintaining the level of service that we've always had in the state of Colorado, whether or not we get a good fix, whether or not that boundary is loaded or not. But for step 4, we waited for a call and validated. San Miguel's not super busy, so we were waiting a little while. So we contacted San Miguel and had them make a test call. So this is that test call from last Monday. I highlighted some items here. This is all through that CMP tool that you should have access to, so you can go look for yourselves and for your own PSAPs when you're up and running and live, or you can do it pre and look at those call traces and be able to see that location query and response. But for this one call for San Miguel, up top to the right, that ECRF to ESN fallback. If it's false, that means that ECRF routed. It's a little confusing. But if it's false, it means it didn't fall back to ESN and it routed based on ECRF, which is a GIS route. Within the call trace itself, so the next one down here on the left, you can see these are the transactions that call did once it came into the infrastructure. So when it did a query out to the location database, it received a response. It then went to that forest guide to say, okay, are you loaded? Can I move to the next step? It was. So then we went to the ECRF and plotted it and found the appropriate PSAP location. You can see the route list that's the route list that it establishes once it falls within San Miguel. And then we can see in other portions of the tool and the logging itself that it did use ECRF routing. You can see that here on the screen and also here on the screen. So just different validations that it did do ECRF routing. So we're excited for that. That's our first call in Colorado for GIS routing, and that was last Monday. I'm going to stop here for a second because I don't want to go too fast. This is exciting, good stuff. I just want to keep in mind everyone's time here. Any questions so far?
Jackie?
Yes. Will the Annie Alley dump or format change at all?
No.
Okay. So Annie Alley is going to look exactly the same.
Exactly the same. We are not messing. We're just for this piece. Now, when we go to I3 down the road, it will significantly. It's a whole different specification and protocol. So when we move Colorado PSAPs to I3, that is a CPE change, a significant one that CPE vendors need to get involved in testing and turn up and migration to that solution. This here is just a routing decision within the infrastructure. So you're still bidding Alley the same way. It's all the same formats. We didn't touch that. This is just prior to delivering the call to you. We're using location information to make that PSAP decision, that GIS PSAP decision. So no changes. And that's kind of the nice thing about GIS routing is we can gain a lot of the benefits of what I3 is, which is that intelligent GIS routing without having to change the CPE stuff.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Matt?
Thanks. Rich,
Yeah.
do you require that the entirety of a PSAP's polygons be provided before you turn on their GIS routing? So
No.
for example, we're waiting on a neighboring PSAP to upload a polygon for the portion of our PSAP service area that is inside their GIS provisioning boundary.
Mhm.
They're working on some issues with other neighbors of theirs regarding those two boundaries. And we're getting concerned. I mean, obviously, it's very early in the process, but, kind of a domino effect throughout the state. Do we need to be waiting on the whole of a PSAP's polygons, if you will? Like in our case, where one of our polygons is in someone else's provisioning area, do we have to wait on them before we can move a PSAP forward with GIS routing?
So I'm going to give you my opinion, and then Caroline, are you on?
Yes.
I think Caroline, keep me honest. If you have established a known boundary that's good, I would say we can move forward with that. If there's still a partial part of your boundary that you're waiting on another county to approve or load, that can wait as long as the information you're providing us is good and validated. And let me say why. Let's say, I'm just going to make this up. Let's say half of your PSAP you validated and half you didn't. For the half that you did validate, any calls that an XY that falls within that, we'll use GIS routing, right? For the half you didn't validate, it'll attempt to do it. It won't find a boundary, and it'll fall back to ESN routing, which is the same way it worked for the last, 6 years or however long we've been up and live. So it's not. I think it's nice to get it pure and clean, and if it doesn't take too much time, then you can. But I don't want to go without the benefit of GIS routing if you have an area that's known and validated. Now, Caroline, that's my opinion. Let me ask you from an operational perspective, do you agree with that, or do you have other concerns?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, actually. And it was something that I was wondering about too, how we should move forward with that. And there is the majority of that PSAP that is provisioned and ready to go. So as long as there's an understanding that there is a portion that is not going to be live, then I'm okay to move forward as long as there's an agreement and that understanding that the whole PSAP won't be there.
If you need something in writing from us, I'm happy to provide it. But that one area that's missing, that's in Gunnison County, it's less than 1% of our 911 calls. And I don't want that to hold us up while Gunnison is sorting out its boundary issues with its other neighbors.
Okay, good enough. I can get that prepared for you then.
So let's move Wesco forward then. Thanks.
Yep, sounds good.
And I 100% agree with you, Matt, here. Again, the worst case scenario here, again, as long as you've validated what you're sending us and you're 100% sure that's good, the worst case scenario here is it works like it has for the past 6 years, which means it falls back to ESN routing, that a call plots within that region, it doesn't find a GIS route, and it says, okay, I can't find it. What's my next level of routing, which is SRDB, ESN routing, and it'll use that. And that's what it's been using since we deployed it anyway. So there's no harm in doing it that way.
So bigger picture, if we would have to be held up by this, then the ripple effect throughout the state from one PSAP jurisdiction to another would be like dominoes, everybody holding each other up.
Correct. I would agree with that.
So thank you.
Yep. Any other questions before we keep going? Okay. So we did, I pulled this from Caroline's spreadsheet here. Miguel was what we did here on the 2nd, and then we deployed these remaining 9 that were ready to go the beginning of the month on Thursday. We've loaded all of those. They've all been validated, and they've all been deemed successful. So those have been live since Thursday, San Miguel since last Monday, and these since about midday Thursday or so. So that's where we are. That's good for us. Our plan right now, again, is to do a load per month. We could probably talk about increasing that if we wanted to. It just seemed like, rather than doing onesie twosies every week or a couple of weeks, it made more sense to gather them all up and do a good load at the beginning of each month. It would be a reoccurring thing. People would expect it. So that's what we're planning on now, once a month. So we'll have another batch ready to go on April 1st. Or the first business day. I'm not sure what day April 1st is. Like this month, it was the 2nd because that was the Monday. Here are some of our statistics. So I ran this last night. This is Friday through Monday. So I wanted to get full days. What we're seeing here is I'll give you the high level and then I'll kind of point out a couple of different things. So if you look at the amount of calls that came through, for these PSEPs, there were 735 total calls that came through and Friday through Monday. 521 of them routed ECRF, which is great numbers. I think if you all remember, I'd say the typical percentages are between 60 and 80. And down here, if you look at the bottom of the grand total, we're at about 71%. So we're doing better than average here. Keep in mind, too, that this is just wireless and VoIP right now. Once these PSEPs go live, we're going to circle back and get road center lines and address points if you have them, and attach those to the wireline numbers. So those numbers should go up depending on how many wireline calls you get. Probably anywhere from 2 to 5 to 10% once we get the wireline in here. But the majority here, the wireless and VoIP, are up and routing, and the 71% is all calls. So compared to all calls for those 10 PSEP, roughly 71% routed GIS. Couple things to point out. If you look at this number, you look at Phillips. That one stuck out to me. Why is that one so low? Everything else makes good sense to me. 16%. So we took a look at that. It looks like one of the carrier that's pretty prominent in Phillips is Viero. So I took that over to our wireless, and I looked individually at at the queries and responses, and we just weren't getting good GIS fixes for that one carrier. Every time that carrier came up, or the range came up, the PNE range for that carrier came up, we weren't getting a good fix. We were getting cell site. We weren't getting any address information back. So I did some investigation and kind of through the years of deploying this, we've always worked with wireless carriers to tweak their timers. Way back when, the timers were set pretty high. And the reasoning behind that was when they delivered to a PSEP, they wanted to give themselves a good amount of time to get a fix, to get it to the PSEP. And way back when, it took a while to get a good fix. It could take 3-5 seconds to get a good fix. So the timers to respond back to somebody querying them could be anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds. And it looks like Viero was still set to that timer setting. So I put in a request to shorten Viero's timer to the industry standard now, which is 1 second or less. And we should see those calls for Phillips go up because they're tied directly to that one carrier. But other than that, we're doing great. I mean, if you look at, for example, Vail's our biggest PSEP by far here. Vail's at a 77% success rate for GIS routing, which is, I rarely ever see over 80% because of just wireless technologies that are out there, old phones, where the person is calling from. 80% is almost the top. I think I've seen a couple of PSEPs at 81 before, but infrequently. Excuse me for a second. I'm going to clear my throat.
Rich, just checking in and making sure you're all right, or did you forget to unmute?
I forgot to unmute. Ha! I've been talking for 3 minutes. I'm so sorry.
Glad you're okay.
Thank you. No, I apologize. Oh, that's so funny. I was making great points. You should have heard it. It was awesome. No, thank you. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay, I'm so sorry. All right. So for the interim solution that I'm going to be talking about here now, what we're aware of happening prior to this is there are certain situations out there. For example, the biggest example of it is like a college campus, that there are boundaries in today's infrastructure that only handle certain call types. So, for example, a college campus that only accepts wireline calls from the college campus. The way that our transitional solution and GIS work today is that the boundary that's provided to us is for all call types. The feature functionality around being able to change based on call type or time of day or special event routing, things of that nature are typically termed as PRF. So PRF stands for policy routing function, and that's an I3 function. So when originally developed, all of those uniquenesses to be able to route based on call type or abandonment or alternate routing, it was required that the PSAP was I3 to do so. So the interim solution for that today, since Colorado is not I3 today, is in essence to take that boundary out. So if there are situations where there's a college campus that only route certain call types, there's two solutions to that we've offered up to the PSAPs that run into this situation. One is to, when they send us a GIS information, don't include that boundary. So we will build all the other boundaries. When and if calls fall within that boundary, what would happen is kind of what we were talking about, Matt, a little bit earlier, that it won't find a valid GIS boundary for it, and it'll fall back to ESN routing. And because ESN routing is working today in these certain situations, that these wireline or VoIP calls or whatever the single type of call type it is already working in today's environment, it'll keep working like it does in today's environment. The other solution, which is probably what I should have just recommended off the bat, is just send us all your boundaries. And what we'll do is we just won't load that within that forest guide, which is what tells us to move on to the next step and do the GIS. Therefore, the PSAP doesn't have to do anything later when we have this feature functionality, and we can just update the appropriate configurations and policy rules and boundaries, turn it on, and it'll work properly through GIS. So those are the two interim solutions that are options. Either the PSAP can control it themselves and just uninclude that boundary area, or they can send it to us and we just won't load it within the forest guide, so it'll fall back to ESN routing. Again, there's no degradation in service from what we do today. These are very limited areas with limited calls. So I ran a report last week of the calls that would be affected. So I took the PSAPs that fall within, and there's only 3 shapes right now that would fall within this example. And I looked at the total amount of calls for it, and in essence, 99.91% of calls would process GIS. It was 0.9 of 1% that would fall into this. It was a couple of hundred out of 500,000 calls for the 3-month period that I looked at. So again, there's no degradation of service. It wouldn't change any of the routing that works in today's ESN routing infrastructure. We would just let it fall back to that ESN routing that it did prior to enabling GIS, and it would route as it should today. Saying that, so it's the way these configurations work is it's a combination of boundaries. So I know it was brought up that it's an EGDMS, or was thought to be an EGDMS issue. It's not, because we can take in those boundary. It's just when it's loaded, it's the intelligence of the system for this type of solution, this transitional solution that we're in, is to identify that a certain boundary is only used for certain call types. And that's that policy routing function, that PRF. So the plan is, when we go to a PSAP and we run into this situation, we can choose one of those two options. The good news, and then I'll take some questions because I'm sure there will be some. The good news is we, Entrado and Lumen, decided to move forward with enabling PRF for non-I3 PSAPs. We saw that this is just too good, that GIS routing is too good, and we want to get those I3 benefits of GIS routing without having to go to I3. So the development for the code to allow that is already complete. It's on our roadmap to get this deployed in July of this year. So we'll be able to go back in July, and any area that we did this interim solution for, which we in essence cut the boundary out so it would route ESN, we can put back in place. And either the PSAP can send it that if they decided not to send it to us, or we can just put it into the forest guide if we already have that boundary, and have the rules updated. So just, that one area only accepts wireline or only accepts voice, or does both wireline and VoIP, but not wireless. So all of that feature functionality will be in place in July. And with that comes really cool additional feature functionality that we haven't talked about, that in the past was we all had to wait for I3 to happen. But since we're developing that policy routing function and implementing it for this transitional solution, all these other things come available. So the first one is what we talked about, which is a PSAP GIS routing by call type, wireless, wireline, VoIP. But we also have GIS abandonment routing available. So right now, abandonment routing and alternate routing are all kind of a fixed list. Either it's, if I need to abandon, I go to A, and if A is not available, it goes to B. If B is not available, it goes to C. Or we can do a load share that says you can just volume distribute over these three PSAPs. But what GIS abandonment routing does is it allows us to tie those to shapes, to additional boundaries, so additional layers to say, if I go into abandonment mode, then I want my north side of my PSAP to go to this PSAP and my south side of my PSAP to go to this PSAP. So now we're making abandonment decisions not based on tabular data, a one-to-one relationship. We're doing it based on the GIS information that comes into our infrastructure. Same thing with alternate routing. So if we go to send a call out to a PSAP and it's busy, or the network's down and it's not in abandonment mode, we now have this is a brand new feature functionality. We could do it for a while for abandonment for I3, but alternate routing is relatively new. It's called a post-send query. So we can make additional policy rules after we actually send it out to the PSAP. So if we send it out to the PSAP and it errors after the fact, if they're busy or down and we get an error back, we can then make alternate routing decisions, again, based on GIS shapes versus a tabular or hierarchical way. And then there's also cool things like we can reroute based on PSAP ingress. So if you had a call come into you via transfer or an abandonment, or it came in as a regular 911 call, we can reroute those calls to other PSAP based on how it came into that PSAP. That's all policy routing function, that PRF, as well as special event routing. So if you wanted to route to a specific PSAP for a parade or a sporting event or a different unique situation, we now can have a layer for that special event routing. All of this will now be available with that PRF that usually we had to wait for I3 for. But now, because we're creating that feature functionality for this transitional solution, this non-I3 GIS routed solution, all that becomes available this summer in July. So it's exciting, and I'm really happy that Entrado and Lumen move forward with this, because it gains a lot of benefits around GIS routing, around the intelligent architecture of our infrastructure, without having to go through kind of what we talked about earlier, all those CPE PSAP changes. There are additional benefits to I3. Absolutely, there are. But we're getting a lot here with being able to do GIS routing that we deployed this last week, as well as all these other additional things we can do with policy routing and GIS routing. So I'm excited for it. But now I'll stop for questions. So I'm sure there's questions on the interim solution and all of this stuff. So I'll stop for a second.
Val.
Yeah, thanks, Rich, for all of that information. I guess from Lita's perspective, we would challenge that this solution offers us a way to route 911 calls the way that we're routing today. The interim solution seems to us that we have two options. We can either pick or choose if we want to route wireless or wireline, or we have to carve out inaccurate PSAP boundaries to provide to you for that whole to route through the MSAG or based on ESN. So we don't think that either of those are a good solution for a live 911 system. We're able to route calls based on wireless or wireline now. And so that's just a hurdle that we can't get over at this time. I understand that it's a small percentage of calls on campuses or similar situations. However, that is a big deal for us because it's different functionality than what we're used to today. The second part of our concern is that we're being charged for this tariff and this functionality that doesn't work as it does today. As far as I know, that started March 1st, and the functionality that we need to work as we do today isn't offered until this summer.
So I'd ask for clarification on two of those facts, Val, if you don't mind. One is where you said it would be routing on inaccurate PSAP boundaries. That I don't understand, because if you give us the PSAP boundaries, then and they're accurate, then anytime that it fell within that boundary, it would route the way it does today. So I don't see that as a degradation of service or inaccurate PSAP boundaries. Can you explain that? Because I don't get that portion of it.
It's just inaccurate according to how we do things in Larimer County. It's not accurate for us, and we would have to carve out holes in our data for you guys to be able to process that accurately, was what I was saying.
Yeah, and I think if we chose option 2 on there, I forget what option is, so I can go back, then we're not asking, you don't have to carve out the holes. We would just not load that one college campus within our forest guide. So that's where I said I should have pushed that option more, because it would have required no changes from the PSAP or the GIS authority themselves. So you do have that option too, where you send us the shapes and we'll just take out that college campus from our forest guide. So at that point, if and when calls fall into that college campus boundary, it will just then use the routing it uses today.
Okay.
So you can send us what you have, and we'll control what we load to the forest guide.
Val, did that answer your concerns and speak to your concerns?
I think so. I'll take that offline and speak with Kimberly and Ben about that. The second part of my concern is paying for the service when we have to make special accommodations versus what we're planning to go live with in July.
And I think what we're trying to do is have a solution here where you don't have to make any special accommodations. We'll make that change on our side, and in July, when it becomes available, we'll create the rules that are necessary for that, and then just load the forest guide on your behalf. So hopefully there aren't any special accommodations needed there. Again, it won't change. It'll only increase the validity of the routing going into your area, since again, I think it's 99.9% of calls fall outside of that boundary. So those would all be increased in value, if you will, because they are routing on GIS, and for that 0.01% that does fall within that boundary, it'll work the way it does today. So it's no degradation of service. But I want to be accommodating 100% of this. It is, I strongly believe that moving forward with option 2 creates a huge benefit for you and your area, because it would encapsulate 99.9% of your area through GIS routing. And I want to do everything Intrado can to facilitate that enhancement of service. So send it, again, my suggestion is send us the boundaries you have. We'll manage them in our EGDMS. We'll have all of our boundaries in EGDMS, but when we load it to the forest guide, we'll just not load that one college campus boundary.
Rich, I'm going to echo Val's concern, and I'd like to be a part of that offline conversation. The challenge that I can speak from our perspective is, with the university in the middle of our telephone authority, it's causing our 911 GIS professional to have to do extra work in order to accommodate a Band-Aid approach for a short period of time. And when Val's speaking to the costs that are incurred, or we're paying for the service, we're also having to pay for extra work to be done through our internal staff to accommodate to a service that isn't fully functional.
So, Steve, what I would say is, if you do option 2, there is no added cost or effort for your folks. They should send them in like they would today, and we'll take care of it.
Okay, well, let's take it offline, because I've already got my GIS person doing extra work through the project to work through this. So maybe it's more of a detailed conversation that anybody that has a university that wants to join could join, if Val, you're cool with that.
Okay. And Caroline, I think you reached back out to Steve. I apologize. You're with Boulder area, right?
Yes.
So Caroline, didn't you reach back out to Boulder and kind of stress option 2? And I think Boulder,
they're definitely in touch.
Right. Yeah, I did.
And Boulder, at that point, from my understanding, they said, "Nah, we got it." But
I didn't hear back from.
Oh, okay.
Rachel.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. Then I don't want to misstate anything on this call. So if option 2 is better, absolutely, let's go down that path. Again, my feeling here is this only makes things better, and if it does happen to fall within, Intrado will fully manage that, and if it does happen to fall within that shape, the way we're doing it, either option 1 or option 2, then it'll route the way it does today. So no degradation service. But Steve, we can have that offline conversation.
Okay. Val?
Yeah, Steve, I just wanted to thank you for throwing that in there. I think that's helpful. And Rich, I understand giving you guys the boundaries. You guys will do the work, and I appreciate that. I think it's just a matter of the authority having to take on the cost of a solution that we believe is incomplete. So that's just what I wanted to make sure I was clear with the group on that.
Okay. And that was it. So any additional questions on any of that?
Very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, anything else for Rich before we go on to number 6? Thanks, Rich, for the presentation. Appreciate it. Matt Allen.
Yeah, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
CDR issue. Yep, go for it.
Okay, sounds good. And I'll make this quick. I just wanted to share a cautionary tale of our migration to Carbine. Since we went live on February 17th, VoIP calls have not had any anti-alley listed in the calls. So what we discovered is that the parsing strategies in use were different between, like a wireless call, a landline call, and a VoIP call. Wireless and landline both work, come in, show us everything we need, but the VoIP calls were still showing incomplete or incorrect. So we've been working with Intrado and Lumen support on this. It's been difficult because in their mind, they're delivering us an anti-alley for VoIP calls, but because it's a different parsing strategy, or at least a different format. Those calls are coming in and it's basically being dropped by Carbine because it can't identify the callback number or the address. It's different lines in the Annie Alley. So I think we're fairly close to a solution on this. We had to work with Intrado. We're trying to get the actual parsing strategy changed so that everything matches all the same. So that's where we are with things. Again, it's just, we went live on the 17th and it's been kind of an issue. You can't call anyone back because there's no actual VoIP number there. The location isn't present. So it's been a struggle, but we're getting closer, and I think we're very close to a solution here. So again, just kind of a cautionary tale if you're moving to a new phone system or Carbine or whatever, to thoroughly check all of your parsing strategies. That's really all I had at this point.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate that. Anybody have anything for Matt? Any questions? All right, great. We're at 11:30. I want to quick move forward. Jennifer, we talked about star codes earlier. Do you have anything else to add to that?
Nope, nothing else to add. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. I threw something on here too. Another cautionary tale. I like that term, Matt. We are had to pause a station alerting project with WestNet due to a litany of challenges. And I just wanted to kind of take an opportunity to ask if there's any other authorities or PSAPs out there that have struggled with WestNet and a go live or ongoing issues. I would like to hear about it. We had to pause for at least a month due to failed hardware and failed project management. So let me know if you are one of those that might be challenged or had an experience that you'd like to share. We'd love to hear. You can do that offline. Lastly, public comment. Anything else to add from the public or anyone else?
This is Andrew Breivert with Lumen. I'm gonna put in the chat just some info and contact info for Michelle Devlin. She will be taking over all new issues on April 8th, so the date of the next meeting. She will be the point of contact for service management at Lumen for the Colorado 911. And I'll send out an email to the ESInet and DORA leadership team with the info that I just put in there. So I am still here and in the point of contact until April 8th when Michelle takes over.
Will she be attending this meeting regularly then?
Yes, she is on here, or at least she was. She may have had to drop, but she has the meeting info. She was on at least at the start, and I'm not sure if she had to drop.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Anything else for the good of the order? Thank you all for your time. We'll see you next time, and we'll close out this meeting and adjourn.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.